That should do it.
This is going to be the longest video you guys ever did.
For this podcast, I'm joined with two special guests. We have Jason from TLDR Filmmaker. You know who he is. He's been on the podcast before. But we're also joined by Heather from Fellow Filmmaker. Heather, why don't you introduce yourself to those who are new to you?
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you both for having me on. As Nate said, my name's Heather, and I am from Fellow Filmmakers, my channel. Of course, kind of like a lot of channels, we do a lot of reviews and stuff, but I like having these type of conversations on my channel as well. So when you guys invited me along, I thought, why not? This is what I do.
Well, I'm excited to have you on, and I'm really looking forward to this discussion on some YouTube struggles, because a lot of people, they don't realize what goes on in a YouTuber's life. They see all the fame, they see the nice products we get, but behind the scenes, what do we actually do day to day? So Heather, she had posted a video about dealing with some struggles on YouTube. And Heather, I'm just gonna pass it over to you and kind of recap that video and just show some of your inner thoughts behind what you were struggling with.
Definitely, yeah. So it was probably a few weeks ago. I was in the middle of trying to shoot some content for a review type video or a comparison, and I was having a difficult time with it. It was a video I'd been trying to do for about, I think, 3 to 4 months. And in that moment, I was just having a hard time. It wasn't working out. I had this image of what I wanted it to be in my head. As I was sitting there that day trying to make myself create something, I just realized how difficult it was. And something I'll often do on my channel is that in that moment, when I'm struggling with something, I'm not a vlogger by any means. I don't even like vlogging, but I'll pull out the camera sometimes and just talk with the audience and say, look, this is currently what I'm dealing with. This is why it's not always perfect. You know, YouTubers tend to show the best parts of themselves and their work, but there is that side where it just isn't working. It isn't, I don't know, coming together the way you thought it would. The thing I was dealing with was perfectionism. And I mean, every one of us does it. We're always, I don't know, we're striving towards this perfect video. It comes together, you know, it reaches the right audience, it does really well, and we think if we spend all this time agonizing about it, formulating the thoughts and, you know, getting the B-roll shot just right, that somehow, you know, we have like this control over it. The perfectionism that we're trying to achieve is almost unachievable. In fact, it pretty much is. We put such a standard on it to look just right that it's almost like we can't really reach it. It's good to reach for it, but it's also one of the things that ends up making it so you feel like you're not getting anywhere.
Watching your channel early on, you've wanted to show that side of filmmaking, just not the polished lives that we live. What was your initial reasoning behind wanting to showcase that?
It's a great question. It always has been there where I want it to be authentic, because for me, I value that in other people a lot. People who they're not trying to fake something for the camera or to, you know, get a view, get a subscriber, get a like, but they're letting it be what it is. That if I had met them in person and they were just going to be a chill human being with me, that's what I would have seen. And I want that. Like, yes, we want polished videos, of course. I just found that it didn't seem like many other people talked about these things. So I'm like, you know what? Maybe I'm supposed to be that person. You know, it's not like a comfortable place to be, because who wants other people to think the worst of them or see the not so polished parts? Of course, that's just how we are. But ultimately, that's what makes, I think, if it was perfect, we probably wouldn't even want to watch it, because we like seeing things that are imperfect. That is human nature.
That's true. Can you talk a little bit more specifically about the problems you're facing on a technical level? Just like, what are some common things that you struggle with day to day as a YouTuber?
Yeah, it varies. I mean, constantly am I trying to improve different areas of filmmaking. One of my, I'll say, nemesis is audio, probably, just because it's one of those areas that I'm like, wow, this is a little tricky. You know, I have at least improved in it, and that's important, but I definitely don't feel I'm as knowledgeable as I could be. I just think it's the behind the scenes working stuff. You know, it's constantly trying to figure out how business works and how you want to work in business. And, you know, the answer could be is pump out content like crazy, have, you know, clickbaity thumbnails and titles and stuff like that, and then you'll get success. You'll grow really quickly. But for me, I prefer not to do that, because I believe I don't want to deceive people and, you know, be clickbaiting and be one of those people. I don't want to associate with something that I don't feel like is me. since I'm the brand, I guess you could say. I hate using that word. I hate the brand thing. It's like, whatever. It's just a channel. But so ultimately, I'm constantly just fighting, I think, internally. And that's why it's kind of interesting that I get to talk about that sometimes on the channel, the internal struggles, because I can't imagine I'm the only person being like this. But then there are technical things. Yeah, there are a lot of technical things. Don't worry. There's like the audio. There's like constantly trying to figure out how to improve, the thumbnails and stuff with what I know how to do. Like Photoshop, I've never touched it in my life. And so I'm starting to learn like the things that are little things like that you can do that improve the quality of your work as a whole. So it's learning more about lighting. Even though I feel like I know a lot, I'm learning more about it every single day. So I don't know if I can name a specific one because it's different every week.
Yeah, that was a really good thing you brought up in terms of, I guess a lot of people don't actually see this side of being a YouTuber. It's like, yes, there is a business side. There's like more to it than just filming yourself, talking about certain things. And I think that plays into the perfection over like umbrella, the struggles that we go through. It's not just the video. There's like 10 other things that go into it. And I think you just hit on something that people don't realize. Yes, we also have a brand, as much as we don't like that word. But yeah, it's like we have just like everything you said, like we want to be genuine because that's just how we are. And that plays into how we think about the branding, the business, everything else that goes outside of the video. And I think people don't see that and they don't realize that that's what we also go through. I'm kind of coming into this like polished thing a little bit late. So like Heather was saying, audio is not necessarily her strongest point, but she's learning about it. Anybody who's been with my channel for a while will know that my background has been trash for the last 3 years by other YouTube standards.
I wouldn't say that.
Well, now it's very different.
You got the RGB lights.
Right, but before it was something, part of my genuine message was I didn't care what my background looked like because I was just another person out there. I don't want to give off this illusion that I just have this perfect little setup that I've built in my spare bedroom somewhere. The struggle for me was to see that people wouldn't take my information seriously because my background didn't look polished. And that was something very discouraging because I was like, but does my background mean anything outside of that it doesn't look pretty? So I think my struggle was to just kind of not dismiss them, but realize that I shouldn't take their word to heart so much, not take it so personally, because there was plenty of other people that could care less. So I think for me, I struggle with when someone like they completely misjudge what I'm trying to do purely because of a visual thing. And so I think I just have to keep going and be true to myself, even though I do have a newer background now, which is nice, but I just don't want that to ever hinder me the way it did.
Yeah. I think the first problem is just comparison to other creatives, where you want to be, or just even your peers. I very much do want to try to put my best foot forward. There's not many views on a video. It's always frustrating, like, dang it, I put all this work and I'm just not seeing a lot of reward at the moment. What I try to do is always remind myself, like, instead of comparing to others, a common thing people say is just compare where you were yesterday. I mean,
all of us tend to start our channels with a different reason and a different purpose. So I think that does play a big part into it, because whatever your reasons were, if you got into it for the numbers, then the numbers are going to matter a whole lot more. If you didn't, they're going to have an effect on you because you do have to pay attention to them after a while. It's a business thing at the end of the day, kind of like what we were talking about a little bit ago, where there's that struggle of so many things to focus on. What do you do? And I do think when it comes to realizing how one type of video maybe has done better, and you can kind of like track a little bit, seeing like, oh, when I talk about, fill in the blank, if it's a certain piece of gear or a certain topic, it does better. It gets better views and feedback and stuff like that, versus these other ones, which maybe you care more about, but they get nothing. They get 500 views, the other ones get thousands. What do you do? I've just come to realize it's better to have less expectations in the views and in the counts even though I want them to be a certain way. Of course, I'm not exempt from that feeling. But to be reminded to enjoy what I do and to not worry so much about it, because when you're worrying about something, you're likely not enjoying it.
There's a point where just getting your video done is better than the perfect video. So we have to define what's good enough, essentially. Of course, we always want to put our best foot forward, but with YouTube, you always have to come to a point where like, okay, this is good enough, let's send it out there. And it's not about just being lazy or you can't finish it, but we just have these ambitions that are way beyond our capabilities of uploading once a week. Do you guys have any instances where you had to kind of accept that, or what knowledge you may have learned?
I know for me, there was a point when I was first starting the channel and creating stuff and whatever, I would take forever to finish a video because I was trying to get these like very, I hate using the word cinematic, but like cinematic B-roll shots, so that I would always do them by hand, and I'd do a lot of movement and this and that and like billions of angles, and oh gosh, I was just trying to do way too much, overshooting to a point where I wasn't sure why I was overshooting, but I was like, yeah, I'm just gonna get as much as I possibly can get. And it's a good thing, but it's better to know why you're getting what you're getting for the video. So I learned that instead of wasting so much time waiting for the perfect, day to shoot the B-roll and then to take hours and hours and hours to do it because I wanted, all this movement and stuff. That's a not bad thing, but it just ended up hindering me in getting something finished, and that weighed on my mind a lot, that it was sitting there unfinished for a longer time than I knew it should have been. And so realizing that maybe if I came up with a process or simplified the process of what I was doing was better. If you take all of that time that it takes to make it feel and be 100% perfect, you waste so much time and it keeps you from doing all the other things. And what you gain in that tiny 10% range, 90 and 100%, it's not a whole lot. The skill level is minimal sometimes. It ends up being just like little tiny tweaks that you do that are very important, don't get me wrong, but ultimately you waste a lot of time from improving largely in other areas, because once again, you wear so many hats. You have to be able to dedicate time to each thing that you have to worry about. So finding your process was helpful, and then learning to just be okay with getting it to 80, 90% perfect, I guess you could say, and then just uploading it and being like, okay, this project, this video is done. Something some friend of mine told me once that was probably the most helpful, was they said, the video that you have in your head or that you're currently not finishing, it does nothing being in your head and sitting there on your computer. If it's going to do anything, it has to be out there. So you might as well get that done as soon as possible. And that has been so helpful to me, because I realized that, it being stuck in my head, all that information that I have or experience or whatever to share and help other people, that's why I'm doing this. It's doing nothing for them. It's not actually helping them because it's still stuck in my head or on my hard drive. I need to just take the initiative, double down, finish it, and get it out there as best as I possibly can, but also realizing it does nothing stuck in your head.
Yeah,
I think I need to plaque that on
you
my
should.
wall somewhere. That's a really good one. Yeah, because I have some content literally in my head or written down, and I know what I'm gonna do, but I just haven't doubled down and just went for it. So that's probably gonna be the kick to my butt to.
It was certainly a kick for me. So if it helps other people, awesome.
One thing I'm curious about, I'm wondering if you guys have experienced this. Do you ever just like look back on a few years old of a video and you realize it's really not that bad, like you're actually proud of your work? Have you guys ever felt that way?
Oh.
No.
I'm just over here shaking my head yes.
Oh, okay. Okay, well, you go ahead then.
Oh, okay. Well, some people on YouTube have they finally figured out I actually came from the dance world with ballet and breakdancing before I came to the film world. And one person, it was my artistic director, I'm going to name drop him because he was very influential to me. His name is Bruce Simpson, back at. He asked me one time, why do you still dance like a student? And I looked at him because he's like, do you not think you're a professional? And I was like, what do you mean? He goes, are you or are you not with us on stage in a professional setting? And I was like, I didn't know what to I didn't know how to answer him at the time. But basically, he was trying to tell me, you have to look at what you've done and realize, like, at the moment as you did it, it's true. You have to have perspective of what's going on. So the reason I was shaking my head yes, watching my older projects and looking at it, was I had to be in the perspective of, I'm proud of it because back then I didn't know any better. And the fact that I was able to pull off an idea, that's good that you were even able to complete it, do some sort of version of it, even if it's not perfect. But at the moment in time, you didn't know any better, but you still did it. You'll do it differently now. So I look back at those projects, I was like, wow, I couldn't believe I did that with the limited knowledge that I had back then. So that's why I was shaking my head yes. When I look back at it, I can say I'm proud of myself that I did it.
Hey, that's good for you. I think I can agree with that. I shook my head no because I am very negative about my own stuff because I'm like, oh, yep, you could have been better, Heather. But I do agree with the point that you made there, is that there are some pieces that I've done. I'm not necessarily happy with like the technical aspect of every single part of it. Like, I think the editing could be better. The lighting, oh my gosh, it's really bad. You know, there's a lot of things like that. But there are pieces that I'm happy with because even though despite those technical errors, and that's just based off the fact that I didn't know better at the time, I'm still happy with either like the story that it told or the fact that I made myself do something. Like there's the documentary project that I was wanting to do. I pulled that together in 2 weeks and it shouldn't have happened, but it did. And I was just happy that even though I was so limited at the time and I was running around like crazy for 2 weeks trying to get it done, it still turned out better than I had expected. It's definitely not like what I would expect from myself now, but I can look back on that happy with at least what I did, knowing that I made myself accomplish something and I grew as a filmmaker and as a person for it. So for me, yes, I think I can agree with the whole, like, I can look back at my work and be like, yeah, I'm pleased I did that. I'm not necessarily, I don't look at it as like a perfect piece though, because I'm like, I see the flaws. I see the flaws, but I also see the beauty of the progress that I gained by doing that piece. So yes and no, maybe, I guess is my answer.
Basically, what I've learned out of all of this is to have the big picture vision. So basically what I learned from my first narrative film, when I had all those fears and wanting to be perfect, and then suddenly realizing in post that something we did was wrong, so then I had to try to fix it and I had to try to be perfect, blah, 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 blah. What I've learned is to have like this gigantic field of view where I'm already thinking about so far down in post-production while we're filming it. So that's definitely helped a lot developing that vision, because the next feature film where I was the DP of, we shot it in 11 days, full-on fight scenes, all this stuff. I had all these talks with the director, and when we finished filming, he came back to me and he showed me the final cut of the entire film in like less than 2 weeks. He cut it all together, and the first thing he said was, you gave me shots that I thought we didn't get, but then I saw all these shots that you went off and got, and they were the exact ones I was looking for. That's the one major thing I've taken away, is to just have this insane vision of all the way into post-production.
I guess for me, I'm constantly learning different things, but sometimes it just comes back to, instead of freezing and being paralyzed, whether that's with perfection, whether that's just with trying to make the next decision, there's always going to be these big ones that come along that almost kind of freeze you up, and you're just kind of going back and forth so much that you get to a point where you don't do anything. And this happens to me sometimes, and I have to realize that I've educated myself as well as I can to make the best decision I can possibly right now. Go ahead and take steps to put that decision into action, because when it sits there doing nothing, nothing's getting really accomplished, and you're continually freezing yourself, because then you're worried about it and, focusing on things that distract you from your ultimate goals and stuff like that. So ultimately, those are the two big things for me that I have to say I've learned and continue to learn, is just to remember the why so that it guides me, and then to not freeze up but instead make some decisions or do some things that lead towards the good decisions that you hope to make and to do, basically.
All right, I think that about wraps it up. If you guys have gained any benefit out of this video, please leave a like below. Tell us what you've kind of learned and what you took away from this episode. Other than that, I want to thank both Heather and Jason for joining. I had a great time.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Yeah, same. Thank you. It was great. Fun, good discussion.
All right, we'll see you guys, or you'll see us in the next one.
Oh boy, I didn't think you were gonna say that. I was just like doing all sorts of weird stuff in front of the camera, and you were like saying bye.